And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Tuesday, March 11th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by DK right there underneath. Best I could do for right now. 4 games ahead of us. We're brought to you by Stokastic. Make sure you're signing up either with Stokastic for DFS Sims or at OddsShopper for the Portfolio EV tool. We've got the Portfolio EV tool pulled up on playback right now. That's sharing the best bets for the entire hour, auto refreshing. So if you want to grab those, hop into playback. If you want to talk DFS, stay here in YouTube, but hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. DK, how did you enjoy yesterday's mess?
I enjoyed it. I had a good day yesterday. I had a chance at some really good money, but unfortunately, Max Christie did not close. Didn't play a minute in the fourth quarter. That was due to me being pretty high on Dinwiddie. So that worked out in a big way. But yeah, it was chaos. It was very stressful. But like slates like that for both DFS and props, I prefer it. I think that's like when you can get the most edge. So even though it's super stressful, I like those type of slates.
Did anything happen to Max Christie?
That's what I was talking about that. I'm like, I figured he had to have gotten injured, but there's no report of it because they brought in like Caleb Martin or whichever Caleb Cody, I forget which one it is. He actually came back and closed. So like I figured like something had to have happened to Christie.
I mean, he was one of those only 8 guys that did not step foot on the floor in the fourth quarter. And he was on my short list of guys that might be able to play all 48 minutes yesterday for Dallas. Yep. So that is very weird to me. I didn't even notice that he didn't play the fourth. It didn't matter at that point for me. So
I was pretty tilted about it because he was low owned. I also had his over points prop. Needed one more bucket. So yeah, it was pretty tilting.
I didn't expect Clay to get like all 12 minutes of the fourth quarter. And that dude's going to explode. He's made out of wet spaghetti at this point. So what a weird one. What a weird one yesterday. And now we've got this basic ass slate, but still fun. 2 7 o'clock starts, both games, next level dreadful. And then Milwaukee Indy is actually a decent game, depending on who's playing. And Clippers Pels is also not that great, but it doesn't matter how good the games are for DFS or sports betting. It's not important in any way. We're going to get our money down one way or the other. You want to start talking about these teams?
Unfortunately, yeah, it's just kind of a gross slate, but let's do it.
Hold on. We got to talk about what Sotex just said. I could bring that up on the screen. Sotex says, I just spent the afternoon listening to 25 worth of Pokemon opening theme songs, which is about 2 seasons worth. I had no clue existed. I am pumped. They're different every year?
I had no idea either. I thought it was the same.
Also, how long is the opening theme? Is that like a minute? Is it 3 minutes? Because that's a lot of time, Sotex.
Yeah, what was it, like 3 hours spending?
All I know is like Pokemon, and that's it.
Right.
That's the only part I know. And I don't even know if that's in the theme. I've never seen the show. I didn't know there was I guess I did know there was a show. It's just a video game to me. Huh. A minute each. Okay. That doesn't sound as ridiculous when you say 25 seasons, because a minute is way more tolerable than if it's like the full length version. You listen to 2 straight hours of Pokemon.
Yeah, I could not do that.
So, Tex, final question here. Why did you do that?
Yeah, is there any specific reason? Like, just randomly did it because you're bored?
Were you like, I need to get motivated today. I need the Pokemon theme. Should I be listening to get like fired up? Because that's never been on my list of get pumped up songs. You don't see anybody like, you don't hear that playing in the arena before the games. Fair enough. Well, from that, we go to the Brooklyn Nets, who are 18 and now let's update that line. Let's just make sure we have the most up-to-date lines for these games, because they're all awful. It's 16.5 at this point, which has now nope, they haven't been usurped by Washington. Still 15. 16.5 plugs. Brooklyn 7 total. Oi, it's not good. It's not good at all. So let's break this one down, shall we? Can we have, like, is this team actually good? They're like the sneakiest team to actually stay in games, but then Cleveland blows everybody out. It's going to be a weird one. No D'Angelo Russell. Tosan Uwoman is with the G League team. that kind of covers anybody that ever plays normally for this. We're getting big ownership to Cam Thomas at 6,200. He's 30% owned. You're getting Zaire Williams, Nick Claxton, Keon Johnson, all in that like 10 to 15 range. And then a little bit coming in to Cam Johnson, who I kind of assumed wasn't going to play today. Same for Noah Clowney. So this one looks a little bit different than what I broke down earlier today. But let's start with the guy that we don't really know what they're doing. How do you want to handle Cam Thomas?
Yeah. Oh, real quick. Your mic was kind of like cutting out a little bit there. So I don't know what happened, but
my guess is it's the fact that I have 10 things shared on my screen and my microphone is going in 2 separate places. So hopefully that helps itself out.
So Cam Thomas right now is getting the most ownership, coming in around 30%. So I think he's going to start at the point for Brooklyn, with D'Lo out over the last 3 games, averaging 10.5 potential assists per game. So the minutes have slowly ticked up on Cam Thomas as well. So first game back played 21 minutes, then 26, then 26, then 29. So I think in a competitive game, you could get close to that 30-minute mark. He's the guy that's going to lead the team in usage. So on a 4-game slate with guard and forward eligibility, I think he is the guy that's probably the easiest to get to for Brooklyn. I also think he is the guy with the highest ceiling. So no issue with the current ownership. If Brooklyn keeps the game competitive, you're probably seeing a pretty big game here from Cam Thomas.
All right. Guys, apparently for everybody that was having an issue, all the people that said they refreshed the stream, that seemed to work for them. If you guys hear it again, please don't let me know. I got someone let me know already, so keep it out of chat. We're good. We'll figure it out. If I have to unplug this bad boy and get it moving, we'll be fine. DK, if you hear it and it keeps happening, let me know and I will just unplug this. Has it happened at all since I've started talking again?
No.
Dope. Well, let's keep it moving then. What do we do with the rest of this Brooklyn team? Because they kind of have some of their real players. Like Cam Johnson, actual decent basketball player. Nick Claxton, actual decent basketball player. They are getting a little bit of ownership. Zaire looks to be probably like the second best option, maybe. But where do you go for the rest of Brooklyn?
I don't have a ton of confidence in the rest of this roster. Cam Johnson on the second night of a back-to-back again. I thought there was a chance he could rest. He's played over 30 minutes in each of the last 4 games. Maybe they take it easy a little bit on his minutes, but I would say like of the rest of the guys in this roster, he's like the next guy with like the highest ceiling. I think they're going to probably play 10 guys here in a competitive game. So, I mean, like Keon Johnson and Zaire Williams look pretty similar to me at 4.4 and 4.7 respectively. Claxton's at 5.4, which is, seems priced about right. He'll split time with Day'Ron Sharpe. And then obviously you'll get some Clowney and Watford there at the 4. So he's playable, but no, not someone really going to go out of my way to play. 32, 30, 29, and 31 minutes over the last 4 games there for Claxton. So you're probably expecting around 30 minutes from him, assuming this game does stay competitive. I think the price on Day'Ron Sharpe is too high at 4,800, backing him up. Jalen Wilson, Tyrese Martin, I think are a little bit thin even on this slate. We'll talk about Cleveland in a sec. I think we're going to get some value here for the Cavs. I don't think that'll be confirmed yet, but we'll talk about that. So, not a ton else to add. Do you have any like strong takes in some of these like secondary guys for Brooklyn?
I really don't. If they were better per minute guys, it might change that up a little bit. But like Tyrese Martin's a 0.75 guy. Noah Clowney's like a 0.75 guy. Jalen Wilson's less than 0.7. Watford's a little sneaky to me just because of the power forward eligibility. But if I liked him a little bit more when I thought Clowney wasn't going to be playing today. So, like a 5%er, it's fine. I think the real focus is Cam Thomas, Claxton, and I think Zaire Williams, but he just scares me because you need every bit of those minutes. But his position works. He's got the shooting guard, small forward eligibility. So I like the flexibility you get there. But as you work your way down, like I don't really trust Keon Johnson when Cam Thomas is in. That's just sort of like a bit of a limiting factor for him. And no matter what Cleveland ends up doing, this is still a horrific matchup for Brooklyn.
Yeah.
They're running into a buzzsaw. Cleveland is exceptional. This is Brooklyn keeps these. It feels like Brooklyn keeps these games closer than you would ever expect. I don't know if this is just coaching or whatever for this team at this point. But Cleveland has no beating the hell out of everybody they play. They've just been dominant. We see it in the minutes played for Garland and Mitchell and Mobley. These guys just don't have big minutes totals this year because they haven't had to. So I'm having a lot of trouble going to like the dregs of Brooklyn, even in what could be a blowout. Like, I'm not really all that interested in an extra 4 minutes of Jalen Wilson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree. And then they still have a couple end of the bench guys that they'll throw in that blowout too. So if the game does blow out, so yeah, I mean Brooklyn, they're just a pretty unappealing team because they run such a deep rotation, and as you mentioned, it's one of the worst spots here against Cleveland.
Well, let's talk about Cleveland because they are, I guess, slightly more interesting than Brooklyn, or at the very least, they might be. As of right now, they are currently the exact same aggregate ownership. 91% to Brooklyn, 91% to Cleveland. But this one might change it up and will likely change up pretty quickly. DeAndre Hunter is questionable. Donovan Mitchell is questionable. S&P alluded to it in chat, but DK, go ahead and tell the people what it means when Donovan Mitchell is questionable. How do we figure out if he's playing today or not?
Yeah, so Donovan Mitchell will tweet out hashtag let him know every single game that he does play. He usually does it, I would say, 3 to 4 hours before game time. We haven't got it yet. So right now my lean is that he's not going to play since we got like an hour and 45 minutes until that game starts.
Yeah. Do you happen to know if DeAndre Hunter has any sort of Twitter way to find out a thing or not?
I wish, but no Twitter secret, I guess, there with DeAndre Hunter. I would say though, so because he was a late addition to the injury report with an illness today, and because the Cavs are such big favorites against Brooklyn, I would lean that Hunter also sits today.
Okay. Let's talk through then the one other piece of information. Ty Jerome out for rest, which that's a new one. I have not seen backup guards get the rest tag before. That's the only piece that like makes me mildly interested in this Donovan Mitchell situation. Like I assume it's just going to happen the same way that it always happens, but I'm surprised to see Ty Jerome be out for rest in a scenario like this, but I don't think it matters in any way. It seems like Cleveland's just going to race them, or like it doesn't matter. They can just rest whatever they want to do and they're going to be fine. So if everybody happens to be in, just hypothetically, 25% ownership coming into Darius Garland, 20 more to Max Strus, is Garland the like no doubt about it guy for you if we get Mitchell out?
Yeah. So if we get Mitchell out, I think he's the first guy that I'm looking to, just because you already have Ty Jerome out as well. Garland gets a pretty nice usage and assist percentage bump with those two guys off the court. He's got a 38.2% assist percentage, as well as a 30.3% usage rate. So at a price point at 7,100, he would probably be the first guy that I would look to. And then I think in that scenario, you probably would see Craig Porter Jr. get dusted off. Just because he was like really the next like backup point guard, I guess. I think he would probably see some rotation minutes in that scenario.
Do you think you're getting the flattening point guard Craig Porter Jr. if Donovan Mitchell is out?
I think he's definitely going to be in consideration for me. The thing that I worry about is, I mean, again, you could see some more Jalen Tyson too. Like they've started him games. So they've started Tyson a few games here when, you know, the Cavs been relatively shorthanded. I think if both Mitchell and Hunter are out, that you would get Okoro starting. But yeah, I think I would have some interest in Craig Porter Jr. I'd want to see what the ownership is. Right now it's completely unowned. I expect that ownership would rise if Mitchell gets ruled out. But yeah, I think I would have some interest because Craig Porter Jr. is not a bad point per minute player. And plus he is someone that, like, if the game does get out of hand, which would still be possible, obviously, he would play in that scenario in a blowout as well.
All right. How does this impact Evan Mobley, Jared Allen for you in this scenario? I think the Hunter news is really big for Jared Allen because they have been able to close without Allen now. They can go to DeAndre Hunter at the 4. That lineup with DeAndre Hunter at the 4 and Mobley in at the 5 has been really great in limited minutes so far. So if Hunter ends up out, it kind of makes me like Jared Allen a little bit more. And I don't think people would be looking at it on that path.
Yeah, I like that shout. I think Allen will look a little bit better minutes wise. Mobley would get a bit of a bump in usage as well. Right now, he's getting very little ownership, sub 10%. So both bigs, I guess, hovering right now around 10%. So yeah, both those guys would look a little bit better. Allen, I think you're going to feel a bit better about the minutes, and then Mobley going to do a bit more, get a bit of a usage bump as well. So yeah, those two guys would benefit a bit. Again, though, I think Garland is the biggest beneficiary, though, if Mitchell gets rolled out.
Are we going to be looking at Dean Wade at all? I mean, Sam Merrill's going to soak up a little bit of extra time if these guys end up out, but not the best per minute guy in the world. This really feels like a heavy Darius Garland focus if we lose Mitchell. If we lose them both, then we're going to get way more than the 91% ownership that we're seeing right now. How do you feel about Strus? Because he's already getting 20% ownership. Second most owned guy so far. Shooting guard, small forward, 4,100. Kind of looks like Zaire Williams.
Yeah, he looks like right now, he looks like a fair value play. If both those guys get rolled out, you're going to feel a lot better about his minutes. Does have the nice eligibility, shooting guard, small forward. So right now, I think he's a reasonable guy to get to, not someone I'm going to go out of my way to play. But if you get both those guys out, you're just going to feel a lot better about his minutes. So either way, I think Strus is in play. But again, he does look better if they're both out.
All right. Obviously, we're going to need this news. There's only so much we could say about Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell and DeAndre Hunter are both giant swing pieces for this spot. So we might be creating a lot more value. Good news is 7:00 start. You're going to get all of this covered on Live Before Lock. Speaking of, that is the show that comes up next. So we're going to take you all the way up until 6 p.m. And then Greg and Eric will be here to finish out the job, going from 6 to 7. They're going to be getting all of the news for Brooklyn, Cleveland, Washington, Detroit. They might even see some Milwaukee and Indy sneaking in at the end of the hour. So you do not want to miss the next hour and a half that we've got going on here. No playback because of the schedule. With everything locking to 8 o'clock, not as much utility for us. So no playback, which means live before is extra special important for you guys. So make sure that you guys are sticking around, and make sure you hit that like button. It's important. We want Greg and Eric to know that you love them. I know you guys love us. That's how you show them. Game number 2. Another true gem in the basketball world. The Washington Wizards are 15-point dogs in Detroit, 235 total. This is the second highest total on the slate. I've got it at the fastest pace. It's a game, all right. No Sadiq Bey, no Malcolm Brogdon, no Bilal Coulibaly, no AJ Johnson. Coach's decision, which you don't typically see already in the day. Not to mention, you don't see it like when it's super unnecessary for a guy that played yesterday, but whatever, not important. No one on the Wizards has an ownership projection north of 10% on DraftKings. Slightly higher on FanDuel. Alex Sarr, Justin Champagnie, Marcus Smart, all around 15%. Oh, it happened again during the ad read, huh? Well, fuck. Wonder why it's happening. Yeah, don't know. Trust me, guys, it annoys me way more than it annoys you guys. What do you want to do here with Washington? Because one, I thought that they might be a little thinner. It seemed like Bilal Coulibaly was going to be out, but only Alex Sarr has double-digit optimal. Only Alex Sarr got to north of 20% boom. We got him ranked 16th coming out of the boom bust tool. Do you have any priorities from the Wizards?
No. I also wanted to mention the rotation last game for Washington. It tilts me a good amount. I had an over there on Keyshawn George PRA, and they switched it up. They ran a pretty deep rotation. They ran the starting 5, and they played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They actually played 11 guys in the first half last game, which is something that you really had not been seeing from Washington. They've been running 9-man rotation usually in a competitive game. So again, you did see obviously Coulibaly get injured in that game, but still they ran a deeper rotation than usual and spread out the minutes a bit more than usual. So I'm curious to see if they do that again here with a couple guys back. But no one really getting any ownership right now on Washington. The guy getting the most love is Sarr, coming in around 10%. And I agree with the field. I think he is the easiest guy to get to. 5.9K. In a competitive game, you're usually getting close to that 30-minute mark from Sarr, 29, 28, and 30 minutes. Over the last 3 games, hasn't really shot the ball the best either. He is getting a lot of shots up, though. 16 shots there against Toronto, 19 shots against Toronto as well. That was they played Toronto in 2 straight games. So I think Sarr is your easiest guy to get to. 7,500 for Poole. If he was playing like mid 30s minutes, I would say, okay, I'm a bit more willing to take a shot there. But his minutes have ticked down even in competitive games. Like you really haven't seen him play mid 30s minutes here since them returning from All-Star break. 31, 28, 29, 31, 31, 23 minutes. So he's going to be chucking. Obviously he does have a ceiling, but I don't really know if that minute ceiling is there right now for Jordan Poole. The veterans on this team, Marcus Smart and Chris Middleton, both getting like no ownership. Middleton's minutes usually in the mid 20s, 6K feels a little bit pricey for him. Marcus Smart is usually coming off the bench and playing, around 20 minutes. I guess he's playable in tournaments, but it doesn't really stand out to me. As I mentioned, the minutes were not great in Keyshawn George last game. He's up to 5.8. Corey Kispert at 4.3 feels priced right. Champagnie at 4.7 feels maybe a little overpriced. You'll get Holmes backing up Sarr, but he's over 5K. So it's just really a price point thing here for the Wizards. Plus, the rotation was not great last game. And then you also have to factor in that they're huge underdogs here against Detroit.
Malakar says George going to put Duren in foul trouble. Malakar, why George? 41st percentile shooting fouls drawn. Not that guy. Not that guy, I don't think. Yeah. I think he's fine in that, like, now that Koulibaly is not there, it feels like he's going to be getting that 30-plus minute mark without any sort of contention. But even in the 31 and a half minutes we have him in for, 3% optimal, 11% chance of 39 fantasy points. It just doesn't look very good. I mean, coming out of the boom bust tool, he's 54th. That's not a great ranking for a slate with only 4 games in it. It's just these guys just don't look very good. And Detroit is a really solid basketball team right now. So they're getting the ownership, that's for sure. But I don't have anybody that I look at for Washington. Clearly it's a 4-game slate.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the guys that are regulars, George, Bub Carrington, Poole, Sarr, they end up in a lineup. I'm not mad about it. 5 to 10% of any of these guys is pretty well fine. But I don't look at one other than Sarr. I don't look at one and think that's the guy I want to have for sure.
Yep. I think we're in agreement.
They don't look that good. Now the other side of this, a little different. These guys are a boatload of ownership. Currently, the most ownership of any team on the slate. And they don't have any injury news. It's just Jaden Ivey's broken leg. And that is resulting in 4 guys in the top 10 coming out of the boom bust tool, including the number 1 guy. 40% owned Jalen Duren, 6,600. He's got an incredible matchup. As long as he stays out of foul trouble, 30 minutes is on the table. How do you want to handle chalky Duren?
Yeah, I think Duren stands out as a really good point per dollar option on this slate. As you mentioned, great matchup against Washington. He's on the season 1.19 fantasy point per minute player. I think the only concern is what you brought up there is, he is foul prone. Now in a matchup against Alex Sarr, is it likely that it gets in foul trouble? Probably not. But if you just look at his last 5 games, 5 fouls there against Brooklyn. He fouled out against the Clippers, 5 fouls against Golden State, 5 fouls against Portland. So he is definitely prone to that. If he avoids foul trouble, though, I like the upside on him quite a bit. Rebounding numbers have been solid for Duren over the last 5 games, averaging 17.8 rebound chances per game. I like the upside on Duren. And then his backup, which I wanted to bring up, if Duren does get in foul trouble, would be a 3.2K Stewart, but Stewart's getting ownership too. Stewart not as good a point per minute as Jalen Duren, but if you do get that foul trouble and Stewart gets extended minutes, there's not a lot of amazing value right now. Stewart 0.95 fantasy point per minute player on the year. He's in play already, but he would benefit in a big way there. So the 2 centers for Detroit right now getting the most ownership, and I have no issue with that. I like them both here.
Yeah, give me both. 24% ownership coming into Beef Stew right now at 3,200. Have them ranked 8th in the boom bust. Up 27%. Boom, 24% chance of 26 fantasy points. I mean, at 3,200, if you're looking for value, it's not the worst way to go. So I completely agree with Stewart. I like Duren. The other 2 guys that are ranked in our top 10, one is a little over 20% owned. The other is a little under 20% owned. The first one is Cade Cunningham, 10,200. And obviously the Clippers look exceptional today. You've got Giannis on the slate who just nukes Indy every time they play. Donovan Mitchell, game time decision. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and assume that decision ends up being out, but we'll see.
Yes.
How do you manage someone like Cade? Because clearly the matchup is as good as it gets taking on the Wizards, but we do have like sort of better options than him, but he is uniquely good as a pay up option in this spot. Is Cade a priority for you?
It's a tough one because we do have good spend ups in the slate. I think if you're looking at the spend ups right now, I think I would rather get to Giannis, even though Giannis is getting more ownership. But I mean, the ceiling is massive on Cade here if Washington can keep it competitive. 10.2K is not a bad price point for him. He's someone that, if Washington does keep it close, you're probably seeing, somewhere in that like 36 to 38 minute range. So I like the upside in him quite a bit, but I wouldn't call him a priority. I think of the spend ups, I would rather get to Giannis, who we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah, I think he looks like properly owned in that 20 to 25% range. He's clearly not like an avoid guy. I wouldn't want to fade him for any specific reason. He looks great. I just think he's properly priced. Value looks us. But I happen to prefer the Clippers guys and Giannis a little bit more. But if Cade's your dude, I'm not telling anybody not to do it. It's the rest of these guys that get a little squirrely. Around 10% ownership for Tim Hardaway Jr., 15 for Beasley, 15 for Asar Thompson. Does one of those guys jump out more than the others for you? Because I had a bit of a discussion about it on the strategy show this morning.
Yeah, for me, it's Asar Thompson. I like him a good amount here. Again, right around 15%. So we got the coach said that Asar Thompson is no longer on a minutes limit a few games ago. And then in back-to-back games, he got massive foul trouble. He's only played 18 and 21 minutes. But I think if he avoids foul trouble and this game stays competitive, you could definitely see over 30 minutes from Asar Thompson. On the season, he's a 1.08 fantasy point per minute player. Again, reasonable price point there for him. So maybe the box score watchers will avoid him, but I actually like Asar a good amount here. Again, reasonable ownership as well. So I think like all those guys that you mentioned, he's the guy I like the best.
Yeah, I think he has the most upside. It's a little tricky because if you watch those box scores, you see him get those boost in minutes with Tobias Harris out. Then you see them come back down to like the natural range. But to me, he's the guy that can pick up a couple extra minutes, and it doesn't really matter who the problem is. He's so positional agnostic that like if it's not going well for one of these guys, he can slot into a couple different roles. So I think his upside in minutes looks a lot better. Obviously, Malik Beasley can just go out there and shoot the lights out, which he does on a regular basis. Hardaway is about as bad of a per minute guy as you can get in the league, but on a day like today is certainly reasonable. There's really not anything I don't like from the Pistons. We haven't even top 23% owned Dennis. Is he a dude for you? There are 8% plus plays on the Pistons today.
Yeah, it cut out a little bit, but I think you're talking about Schroeder. 23%, 4.4K. I think he's a pretty good value option. You have been seeing a lot more overlap with him and Cade Cunningham of late, 28, 25, 24 minutes over the last 3 games of Schroeder. We kind of thought that would happen when he first came to Detroit. They kind of eased him back in. You didn't see a lot of overlap, but you've been seeing that a lot more lately with a guy like Dennis Schroeder. So I think right now he stands out as a pretty good value option. Could definitely see, I don't think you're expecting it, but he has mid-20s minutes for sure in the range of outcomes. Again, we've kind of seen that over the last 3 games. So I think he's another guy that stands as a good point per dollar option. You mentioned Hardaway. Again, he's around 10%, 4.2K. Again, really bad point per minute player, pretty score independent. I mean, not completely out of play, but doesn't really stand out to me. I don't think I'm going to be getting to the likes of like the fringe rotation players like Fontecchio or Ron Holland. Probably not going to go there. I didn't mention Tobias Harris, 5,700. His minutes have been very solid. 36 and 37 minutes since he returned from injury. Maybe played a couple extra minutes because of the Asar Thompson foul trouble, but still, pretty consistently playing 30-plus minutes and is at a reasonable price point as well. So, yeah, Detroit, I think right now, probably the best team to target on this 4-game slate.
So I unplugged and replugged back in. Anything bad or good?
It sounds good.
Well, yeah. We'll hold on to that one. The long and short of this one is this. The top 8 plays for the Detroit Pistons today are ranked 1st, 7th, 8th, 9th, 14th, 19th, 26th, and 30th. 8 in the top 30 for the Pistons. You're absolutely finding something you like here. You're probably getting 2 Pistons in just about everything you build. And I don't have anybody that I look at and I think, I definitely don't want that dude. Like, that's my clear fade.
Mm-hmm.
They all look damn good. And that's what happens when you get to face the Washington Wizards. They stink, and they make everybody else look better. Okay. Apparently, unplugging it and plugging that bad boy back in was the move per news god. So,
yeah, it sounds good now for sure.
Should have tried that shit 20 minutes ago. Well, what are you going to do? Here's what we're going to do. I got something to talk about, guys. It's exciting. You guys like PGA? Got a hell of a week coming up. There's a millie this weekend. Boom. Flash sale time. Guys, it's right here. You can see it on the screen right now. The promo code is PUT. You can get 50% off any PGA DFS package that you're looking for. Whichever one you want. If you want to get in on PGA, projections, ownership, sims, all that good stuff, you could do that right now. We've got this promo going for 50% off. This promo will only exist for this show and for Live Before Lock. When Live Before Lock is done, this bad boy is over. So you got to take advantage of it as fast as you can. We only have 30 redemptions available. So if you're going to get in, you got to do it quickly, because if there's 30 gone, there's 30 gone. We don't have room for any more. So if you want to take advantage, link in the description, I hope, or just browse directly to stokastic.com, choose your PGA package, enter the promo code PUT, P-U-T-T, for anybody that's going to struggle there. It would be PUT if you only use the one T. P-U-T-T is the promo code. 50% off any DFS package using that code. It's a great week for PGA. We've got a strategy show. We might even have a Live Before Lock. Don't quote me on that, but I think Ben's going live tomorrow, breaking this bad boy down. Don't want to miss it.
I'll probably fire a lineup in that Millie Maker. I'm awful at golf, but every time there's a Millie Maker, I'll usually make a lineup.
Yeah, I don't want to open my Roto Tracker and see my golf history, because it is a number that is not fun to look
really
at.
Really bad for me too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a car. It's a nice car. I've never done anything worth shit in PGA. I had one decent sweat once, and like coming down to the final 2 holes, I tumbled from 2nd to 200th, and it was just over, and I wanted to die.
Yeah, just golf, not for me. It is a fun sweat, though. I do like the sweat of like your guys trying to make the cut, like that Friday sweat. That is fun. Yeah. But yeah, I just like, for me personally, I don't have an edge in it. I'll still play it, but I don't have an edge at all.
Well, let's get to game number 3. We got a little bit more basketball to talk about here. First one up is the Milwaukee Bucks, 2.5-point favorites in Indy, 236 total. Technically the highest total on today's slate. Got a little bit of ownership coming into the Milwaukee side for the Bucks. Pat Connaughton's questionable. Pete Nance is questionable if you want to think about someone that's totally useless. But Giannis is probable. Dame is probable. Bobby Portis is still suspended with stuff that I got in my IV yesterday. Sorry to Bobby Portis for that one. That's a true statement, by the way. I got exactly what he got suspended for. Sorry, Bob. So now, who made the joke? Was it Greg? I can't remember who made the joke. So apologies. Maybe it was Spags yesterday. But I might have to just go like pop Nikola Mirotic in the grill, fly over to Europe, channel my inner Bobby Portis. But first, I'm going to start with playing a lot of Giannis Antetokounmpo. 11,400, power forward, center eligible, 38% owned. To me, the clear payout. He looks incredible here. I don't like personal team history, but Giannis beats the brakes off of Indy pretty regularly. They just don't have anybody that really matches up well with him. I assume you're on my side here. This dude is just the guy today.
Yep, he's my favorite spend up for sure. Giannis was on a minutes limit for a bit, returning from All-Star break. They're kind of keeping him in that, 30-minute range or so. He's played 35 and 34 minutes over the last few games. I think you're probably expecting around 35 minutes from Giannis. As you mentioned, it's a really good spot here against the Pacers. He's a 1.68 fantasy point per minute player on the year. 4-game slate, raw points are going to matter for sure. As I said, I think we're going to get a little bit more value opening up here for Cleveland once we get that confirmation. So, of all the spend ups on the slate, Giannis is my preferred option. Again, I don't think that's a super strong take because he's getting a good amount of ownership, but like Giannis a lot here.
Yeah. And that's, that doesn't take a lot of discussion to be like, hey, Giannis Antetokounmpo confirmed good today on the 4-gamer. It's just, he's got the highest raw point ceiling of anybody that's going today. What about the rest of Milwaukee? Because Dame's getting about 15% ownership. Seems right to me. Looks good at 9K. Got some competition, though. And then it's just a sea of 5 to 10 percenters. Kuz, Brook Lopez, Taurean Prince, Gary Trent, AJ Green. Outside of Dame, what do you do here with this team?
Yeah, outside of Dame, I mean, I think you can take some shots in tournaments and some of these guys. Brook Lopez is 5.6K. The issue is the minutes have not been amazing on Brook Lopez, even in competitive games, 29, 33, 23, 27, 30 minutes. There was a stretch of time where he was consistently playing mid-30s minutes. So I don't really see that minute ceiling right now for Brook Lopez. They feel, content, playing Jericho Sims as the backup 5. Kevin Porter Jr. did overlap a little bit with Dame a couple games ago. You did not see that overlap at all last game. So that's a bit concerning. Like if there's no overlap there with KPJ and Dame, I think it's really hard to get to KPJ. If you think there's a chance they could overlap, then you can take a shot there. But with Milwaukee basically being fully healthy, I think it's a little bit more likely that he'll just not overlap at all with Damian Lillard. Let's see. Gary Trent, again, 4,100 for him. Shooting guard, small forward, eligible. Minutes, but a little bit up and down. You're probably expecting around 25 or so from him. He's making his shots. He has the ceiling. So on a small slate, again, nothing really more to add to him. Like he's viable, but doesn't stand out. Kuzma's at 6.2K. The good thing with Kuzma is they're playing him a good amount of minutes. Played 39 last game against Orlando. A little bit 32 there against Cleveland, but still, he's consistently playing 30 plus minutes. He's the number 3 option. Again, more of a last piece in there for the Bucks. Right now, again, around 10%. Taurean Prince around 10%. I'm just like indifferent on him as well. So I wish I had like more to add here. I wish I had more like hot takes with some of these fringe guys from Milwaukee, but I really don't. Yeah. They're kind of just like filler guys, last piece in, but nothing really standing out here.
I mean, it's sort of like Brooklyn in that, Taurean Prince is a terrible per minute guy. Gary Trent's a terrible per minute guy. AJ Green's a terrible per minute guy. Jericho Sims is a terrible per minute guy. Kevin Porter Jr. isn't, but probably going to play like 14 minutes or something. You need a really good run out on somebody like him. It's really Kuzma and Lopez, and Lopez isn't all that interesting. Kuzma might just be confirmed bad. He's been worse for Milwaukee than he was for Washington, which is tough to do. So I really think it's just kind of Giannis, Dame, and a couple of these guys sneak in if you're playing 150, but you're probably ignoring most of Milwaukee here.
Yeah. I think outside of Giannis and Dame, not a ton that I love. So
now, well, let's get the hell away from Milwaukee and talk about the Pacers if we can. We do have an updated injury report for 5:30, so let's make sure we have that. And that information now contains a questionable tag on Tyrese Halliburton, like we knew, and a questionable tag on TJ McConnell, like we knew. My expectation here is that Tyrese Halliburton is not playing this game. I have this line very different if Halliburton is in compared to out. Now, that could just move the line as well. Like both of those things, like they could just go in opposite directions. But my assumption right now is that Halliburton is not going to play. He has missed the previous 3 games. Do you have a lean on Halliburton before I said anything?
I didn't. I thought it was a little bit more 50-50. I know last game the comments were not yet for Halliburton. It is a back-to-back, so maybe they're saving him at home here against Milwaukee. Right now I don't have a super strong lean with whether or not he's going to play.
Okay. Well, there's no ownership coming into the Pacers, assuming he's in. He got to 11%, 28 on FanDuel. Much more interesting there with the MPE, but he's at 11 on DraftKings. It's single digits to every other Pacer. So let's just start with if Halliburton's in, anybody that stands out.
If Halliburton is in, no. The price point is up on Halliburton at 8,800. I think if he plays, there's a chance they don't play, like they ease him back in a little bit. And then, like a lot of these guys have been priced up from when Halliburton has missed games. Siakam's over 8K. You got Nembhard pushing 6K. You have McConnell around that 5K mark. So like Naismith and Mathurin both around 5K. Yeah, a lot of these like rotation players, Turner's close to 7K, have been priced up from when Halliburton has been missing games. So Halliburton's in. Yeah, there's really not much here for the Pacers that stands out to me.
Now, what do we do if he ends up out again? Is it Nembhard? Is it Naismith? I think it's probably Mathurin. Is it McConnell? Who's the first guy you want to go to if you get the Halliburton out news?
Yeah, so the first guy for me would be a $5,800 Andrew Nembhard. So he's like a different player when Halliburton is out. He has a 32.2% assist percentage. The usage goes up a bit as well. Minutes, he can push for mid-30s minutes for sure in a spot like this. So I think Nembhard would be the first guy that I would look to. Tilted me yesterday because I had some money on Nembhard and McConnell props, and the Pacers just waved the white flag like right at the beginning of the third quarter. So that had me upset. But I think the first guy I would look to would be Nembhard. Mathurin started that last game that Halliburton missed. So I think he would probably start again. He had a huge game. I believe it was off the bench against Atlanta. He would look better. And then TJ McConnell. So 2 games ago, rolled his ankle. Of course, I had a lot of money in his props, and I played him in DFS. And then last game, only played 9 minutes. But again, he didn't really play at all in the second half because they just waved the white flag so early. He would be another guy that would look better. So I think Nembhard, the first guy I would look to. Then Mathurin and McConnell. And then I think like Siakam will look a little bit better. 8,200, he would be fine. Turner looks slightly better. But yeah, the first guy I look to, I think, would be Nembhard.
I think he naturally looks the best. I'd also be very interested in the McConnell news. He'll look even better if McConnell is also out. His rates, at least in the past, have been dramatically different when he's not on with either one of those guys. Like it's bump with no Halliburton, extra special bump with no other ball handler like that. I think Mathurin ends up being the easiest guy to get to after that, just because of position and price. Small forward stuff to fill, especially on a 4-gamer. I think you start giving him a couple extra minutes, and that's where that value starts to become pretty massive. So I'd be looking at him, but everybody gets an incremental bump if Halliburton is gone. There's just more minutes to go around. There's more usage to go around. There's a little bit of everything across the board. And it takes this indie team from a spot where like everybody looks the same, like all these value numbers relatively similar. I mean, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 optimal rates on the screen right now between 9.8 and 5.7. Like all of these guys are grading out as the exact same thing. If you get Halliburton out, I think that's where you start to see some separation. But I think Nembhard and Mathurin are the two that are going to catch my eye the most. I'm happy that TJ McConnell's 4,900. If he were like 4,200 today, he would be a real issue as the backup, not having any clue how many minutes he's going to play.
Yeah, I do think though McConnell would be interesting if Halliburton gets rolled out. Because I don't think the ownership would be crazy on him. And we've seen in the past when Halliburton's missed games that you like McConnell has played like 25 minutes. Like he has that type of minute ceiling in him. Yeah. He also gets again that assist bump as well. He has a 40% assist percentage. So I don't think his ownership would be crazy, but I would still have some interest in him for tournaments for sure.
Alrighty. Anything else you want to touch on here for Indy that you think would be relevant?
No, I don't think so. I mean, a couple games ago, it was Shepard that started for Halliburton, but last game, again, it was Mathurin. So keep an eye on it, but I'm pretty sure if Halliburton's out, they'll stick with Mathurin in the starting lineup.
All righty. Well, folks, you like the Portfolio EV tool? Do you know what the Portfolio EV tool is? Well, if you don't, it is the premier way to get money down, sports betting or pick'em sites. Portfolio EV tool on OddsShopper.com is absolutely nuking. You can see that through anybody that gets retweeted from the OddsShopper Portfolio EV account, whether it's Greg's Bankroll Challenge, which has gone from 100 to well over 1,000 since the beginning of the NBA season. I know Nathan's got a challenge out there. Aton, Laffy's putting out content constantly. Eric. We added a boatload of new bets over the last week. The Portfolio EV tool is cooking. I think Greg got down like 400 bets on Saturday. Incremental tiny edges, folks. Build them all up. Make that money. The screenshots speak for themselves. Come in and check it out. We're giving you OddsShopper ratings to let you know what the best plays are, the expected value and expected win rate. We've got parlay builders, odds boost calculators, and more. You can sign up through one of our partners and get a free month. Or if you're just interested and you've never signed up before, you could always get a 7-day free trial of the Portfolio EV tool. That link is going to be in the description. Click it, sign up. No terms, nothing weird. As long as you've never signed up with us before, you get a week for free to check out what we've got going on. And I think by the end of that week, you are going to want to stick around, and you'll be able to sign up through one of our affiliates if you want to do that. If there's a Sportsbook or Pick'em site that you haven't signed up for yet, you'll get a bonus from them. You won't pay anything to us, and you'll get a month of Portfolio EV. It's the best way to build a bankroll now. This is the new cash games, everybody, so take advantage.
I wanted to mention one thing in the chat. Chris Albers said, why did Mathurin only get 23 minutes last game but 40 the game before? It was because they waved the white flag early in the second half. Mathurin played 17 first half minutes last game, so he was probably on pace to play mid-30s minutes if the game would have stayed competitive. But yeah, that was the reason that he only played 23 minutes.
Well, we're going to go ahead and get rid of "Hey Josh, has your wife left you yet" guy.
I saw that.
Definitely don't need him at all. No, she would never leave me. I'm too awesome. God, I'm married for fucking 11 years. She is leaving me on Thursday to go to St. Martin. That's happening. I'm jealous. Oh, well. But no, still hanging out here, oddly enough. It's like I'm a catch. Something along those lines. The LA Clippers are 7-point favorites in New Orleans. 222 total. Late night hammer. 8 p.m. start here. Taking on these Pels. And the Clippers look damn good today. Drew Eubanks is questionable if anybody cares. Norm Powell still out. Ben Simmons still out. This is where we're getting the ownership. And this is where we're getting 3 of the primary plays. James Harden, 30% owned. Ranks 5th in the boom bust tool. Kawhi Leonard, 40% owned. Ranks 6th in the boom bust tool. Ivica Zubac, 47% owned. Ranks 4th in the boom bust tool. That is 3 of the top 6 plays coming from the Clippers in this spot. Let's start with Zoo. I assume you like him, and that kind of goes without saying. What do you like about Zoo? How do you compare him to someone like Jalen Duren?
Yeah, so Zubac, again, getting a lot of ownership, but he honestly should be. The minutes have ticked up for Zubac over the last few games. 39 minutes in regulation, back-to-back games. He played 44 against Sacramento, but again, that game went to overtime. Zubac, pretty good point per minute player as well on the season.
Halliburton in, TJ McConnell in.
Okay.
Let's keep an eye on that line. I want to see how much it moves. Continue. Sure. Sorry about that.
No worries. Yeah. He's a 1.19 fancy point per minute player on the year. I think you're probably expecting high 30s minutes from him, assuming no foul trouble. So he looks good. I think comparing him to Jalen Duren, I think I feel a little bit better about Zubac. There's not really any, there's not as much blowout risk, I guess. Or what's the spread in this game 7. Right now? 7.5. Yeah. So not as much blowout risk, I guess. So both the centers look good, but I think if I had to pick between the two, would slightly prefer Zubac.
I love them all. I do prefer Zoo to Duren slightly. I like the spot a little bit more. Obviously, the spot against Washington is great, but I trust Zoo to be out there for real minutes more so than I trust Duren. And I like the idea of having Zoo plus Stewart lineups. I think that feels pretty natural. Or Zoo plus Duren if you want to go that way. You could easily get those two centers if you need them. But I think Zubac looks like one of the easiest plays that you want to get to. Do you have a preference between Harden and Kawhi? You want to flip that coin? Because they both look awesome. I tend to lean Kawhi because of the positionality, but Harden's playing even bigger minutes than Kawhi is.
Yeah, they're both playing huge minutes. I think factoring in position plus price, Kawhi, I think, is a little bit more optimal, I guess, to get to. It just looks a little bit better point per dollar right now than Harden, but I'm not going to say no to $9,900 James Harden, who is playing massive minutes right now. So, yeah, the top 3 guys for the Clippers are getting a ton of ownership, and I'm in agreement here. They all 3 look really good. Kawhi's minutes obviously been insane, too.
I have a really hard time separating these guys from each other. But they all look awesome, especially like having Norm Powell out, having Ben Simmons out. You shrink that rotation. They've been jamming these minutes to these top guys a little bit. It's really hard for me to get away from them. I'd expect to have at least one of Harden, Leonard, and Zoo in everything I'm doing. I assume I have two of them in a decent chunk. But we don't just stop there. Chris Dunn also 10th in the boom bust tool, 25% owned, 27% optimal, 21% chance of 34 fantasy points. He's 4,700. He's point guard, shooting guard eligible. What do you do with Chris Dunn?
Yeah, I think Chris Dunn's a reasonable value play, pretty firmly in the rotation. When he avoids foul trouble, he's usually playing close to that 30-minute mark. So I have no issue with him. Ownership feels about right. Not too high, not too low. So no real super strong takes on Dunn, but pretty solid value play. Again, assuming he avoids foul trouble. He is pretty foul prone. He's usually, on the other team's best guard. So you do have to factor that in a little bit, but right now stands out as a decent value.
Nick Batum, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Amir Coffey, Derek Jones Jr. What do we do with the remaining four real dudes from the Clippers? Do you go to any of them? Batum, obviously, getting a bit of increased minutes over these past few games. I don't know if that's long for him, but it feels like it is.
I know. If that continues, I do think Batum is a decent value play. I'm glad you mentioned that. Like they've ticked way up. Again, he's been starting the last couple of games. 34, 28 minutes. Obviously, he's not a great point per minute player, but he's 3,700. If you're going to get close to 30 minutes from Batum on this slate, he's going to stand out as a decent value play. Now, if they kind of switch it up and maybe they, go to a bit of a different route, then maybe someone like Derek Jones Jr. would benefit. Right now, Nick Batum coming in around 10%, Derek Jones Jr. sub 1%. So you wanted to take a shot in Derek Jones Jr. in like a large field tournament. I don't think it's the worst idea. Obviously, Derek Jones Jr. not a great point per minute player either. But I do think if, they take it easy a bit on Batum's minutes, Derek Jones Jr. would probably be the guy that would benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always intrigued because every time I think that Batum is about to get a couple extra minutes, he'll go back to like playing 18 and then Derek Jones Jr. plays 28 and so does Coffey. And you're just like, shit. Those guys are intriguing to me because I don't think the Clippers in this spot are married to their rotation outside of Harden, Leonard, and Zoo. Like they can move this stuff around pretty easily. So they're at least mildly interesting to me as like last man in, large field type stuff. They don't look at like great plays because Amir Coffey and Nick Batum are terrible per minute guys. Bogdan Bogdanovic and Derek Jones are average per minute guys. But this is the number two team on the slate behind Detroit. 162% ownership, 142% optimal, 158% boom. Those are the second best across the board. And Harden, Leonard, and Zoo are just making it all up. Does it matter to you at all if Drew Eubanks plays or not?
No. I don't think it is. I'm not even sure if he's available, if he would play. They've been going a little bit small behind Zubac, so I don't even think that matters.
The Milwaukee line down to 1.5 now. I'm curious if it gets down another point because it was 3 when we started the show. So makes me feel a little bit better. Yeah, that's for sure. Anything else you want to touch on here for the Clippers before we get to the final team?
No, I think I'm ready to move on.
Well, here we go, guys. One last time. Hit that like button if you haven't done it yet. Live Before Lock coming up next. I can see Greg and Eric patiently waiting to get in here. Maybe we'll just go long, make them wait, let them stew in the waiting room for a bit. Let's talk Pelicans. Pelicans are missing some bodies. That's not news. Jose Alvarado, though, is available for today. Brandon Boston's out. Kelly Olynyk out for rest in this one. We are getting 55% ownership to a $3,700 power forward center, Carlo Makovic. Does that make sense to you?
If he starts, yes. I'm leaning right now that he will start because it seems like the Pelicans want to run that like big lineup. So if Makovic starts, I have no issue with that ownership. Obviously, if he does not start, then I do have an issue. But that ownership would come down, I think, if we get an announcement that he's not starting. Yeah.
And my guess is he is. So, we'll see. But be aware, you might need to be swapping off of that a little bit. But if he's starting 26, 27 minutes, something like that, good enough per minute guy. The power forward eligibility is doing a lot of work here, but we got him 50% optimal, 55% owned. He's the most popular value play that exists on this slate. You're going to be getting to him a lot, and I think it makes a ton of sense. You're not getting to a lot of the rest of the Pels, though. 20% to Alvarado, which scares the shit out of me at 4,600. And then 5 to 10% on Murphy, McCollum, Williamson, Messi. What else do you like here, and what do you want to do with Alvarado?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Alvarado. That ownership does feel a little bit high. I know we started last game, we played 32 minutes, but this is a bit of a different scenario now. A few guys back. So the ownership does feel a little bit high on Alvarado. I think it's kind of interesting that he's like getting a decent chunk of ownership, but like, Bruce Brown and Hawkins, basically no ownership. To me, those three all look pretty similar. I don't love the ownership right now on Alvarado. I do, though, like Zion as contrarian play at 9,200. So he's been like the point guard for them over the last 5 games. He's by far been leading the team in potential assists, averaging 17 potential assists per game over the last 5 games. On the year, he's a 1.55 fantasy point per minute player. If the game does stay competitive, you're probably expecting close to that 30-minute mark. I know it's not a great spot here against the Clippers, but on a 4-game slate, he's getting 5% ownership. I think of like the spend ups that are not getting much love. I think Zion would probably be my favorite of like the contrarian spend ups, I guess.
I like it. We got him 11% optimal, only 6% owned. That ends up ranking 18th, 24% chance of 56 fantasy points, which is a big number. The spot's tough. Clippers defense is really good. But to get a little bit different on this slate on a 4-gamer, like you don't have a ton of spots and the ceiling on Zion is there. We have seen him get, like he could play 30 today and you'd be like, okay, that'll work. I got everything I could possibly get out of him. And the Pels could just win. Like they're 30% to win this game outright or something like that. And if that happens, there aren't a lot of names that you think are doing it. Zion's probably the first one. So I like the shout. I think he's probably a little underrepresented for what we're getting. He's been playing great lately. Look, when he's healthy, he's incredible. He's just never healthy. But I think I saw a stat recently, like the amount of isolation possessions that Zion takes is like he's barely on the chart compared to anybody else in the league in terms of like success rate and isolation. It's something to do with like people sending doubles to him. He's really difficult to guard one-on-one. And that's probably part of the reason why the Pels are willing to try to make Zion be a thing for so long. Maybe pair that ass up with Cooper Flagg in a couple months. They're going to need something to save this team. Anything else here for the Pels? They are a pretty uneventful basketball team today.
Yeah. Trey Murphy, I think, is playable as a, contrarian option as well. I think I would rather get to Zion if I was going to, pick one of those guys. The minutes on CJ in competitive games has not been great. 6,900, probably going to pass there. Misi, probably the last guy we should talk about. He's consistently playing like mid to high 20s minutes in competitive games. Can you play him? Yeah, he doesn't stand out though. And we do have some good centers on the slate, right? Giannis is center eligible. We have the Cavs guys. We have, Dern and Zubats that we talked about. So we do have some good centers on this slate. So I don't think there's anything else to add. I think you'll probably see a little bit of Jerry in the rotation, but don't think it's necessary to go to him. So yeah, that's basically all I got for New Orleans.
Well, 4 games up, 4 games down. DK, tell the people where to find you.
You guys can find me over on Twitter. That's going to be DK__DFS doing prop and daily fantasy sports content.
All righty, folks. The deeper dive is in the books. If you're looking for breaking news, live before lock is where you want to be. Thanks to DK for being here. Hit that like button in the interim. Live before lock is coming up next.
And here we go. A little bit lower key of an NBA Live Before Lock tonight. Only 4 games. We don't have some sort of crazy long list of players on the injury report. So Eric and I probably aren't going to be constantly reacting to news. We do have one key player who's on the injury report, Donovan Mitchell. I strongly expect he's going to get ruled out in the next 15, 20 minutes or so. He didn't do the tweet, Eric. So I'm going to assume that he's out. And
I remember bringing that tweet up to you once upon a time. I remember bringing that tweet up to you once upon a time. It was a beautiful time. It also feels like years ago. And it's funny that how, like, I don't have notifications on all the time for like individual people, but I definitely turn notifications on for Donovan Mitchell's Twitter every single day that he's questionable. And haven't gotten the let him know tweet. So I just assume he's not playing basketball because generally, if you're paying attention, that generally comes in around 90, 95 minutes before tip every single time at the very latest. So don't see anything of him on court over on X. I've been looking. Don't think he plays today.
Yeah, that's the way it seems like it's going to be going for today. So when we get that news, we'll let you guys know, just like Donovan Mitchell usually lets us know via his Twitter whether he's going to be playing or not today. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm on the same page as you, though. I think he's not going to end up playing, but it's the first game of the entire slate. So I don't know about you, but like I didn't feel like I needed to make some sort of massive accommodations for just as we're going to know well before the slate starts, probably in the relatively near future.
He will let us know. In fact, he's going to, well, actually, by not letting us know, he is letting us know. Ruled out as we say that.
All right, there we go.
DeAndre Hunter out too. Oh my God. Give me all the CLV. I jammed so much stuff on the Cleveland side. Max Strus 10 plus even money. What else do I have? I have Mobley 20 plus 125, 2 plus
Nice.
threes. Garland 20 plus 25 plus 225 on 25 plus. Oh, if this is going to be one of those Garland, you know how many times he's failed his chalk this year? I'm going to guess 48. Like this is just absolutely going to be over a million Garland game. Just, let's go.
Well, the one saving grace is that he's not going to have Josh watching him on playback, which has just been the worst thing that could ever happen to Darius Garland is he's chalk, Josh is overweight to him, and is watching him play on playback. I'm telling you, the games that Darius Garland has been chalk, that Josh is on him, that we've watched the Cavs play on playback, he's probably one of 70 from the field. We just watch him.
I'm glad there's no playback show after this today. We can't have Josh ruin it. So that'll be nice. That'll be nice.
It can only be good for Darius Garland. It can only be good for Darius Garland's outlook today because Josh has powers to ruin any Darius Garland chalk game when he watches him play. And even there was a funny game last year where Mitchell was out. Garland was crazy heavy chalk. Josh had him in like 90% of lineups. And we're watching the game. Garland scores like 2 fantasy points in the first quarter. Nothing happens. I think Josh stepped out to order dinner or something or go pick up dinner. He came back 10 minutes later. And like in the time that Josh was gone, Garland scored like 20 fantasy points and then did nothing the entire time Josh was back. And then we left at halftime to, just go about our nights. And then Garland smashed in the second half as well. So for whatever reason, Darius Garland, he just shits his pants when he knows Josh is playing him in DFS and is counting on him.
It's like you and Jimmy Butler, except for now you have to go to San Francisco instead of Miami. What a downgrade that is in cities. My God. There's not really a city in America I'd rather go to less than San Francisco for any random reason. But anywho, that's neither here nor there. Let's party.
Yeah, when we have projections updates, we will be bringing that to you guys, but it's only a 4-game slate. We're not going to have too much other news. The one piece I was uncertain on, Eric, I felt pretty good that Donovan Mitchell wasn't going to play. I had no clue on DeAndre Hunter. I really didn't know what was going to happen with DeAndre Hunter. So now we've got this Cleveland news. We'll have projection updates coming in a couple of minutes. I want to know your initial reactions to who it is we're liking from Cleveland. And don't forget, Ty Jerome is resting, which I didn't think he's a guy who gets rested in these scenarios, but apparently is today. So no Ty Jerome, no DeAndre Hunter, no Donovan Mitchell. What stands the most to you about the Cavs?
Yeah, the 2 biggies right off the bat, you're going to get Garland, 7,100, and you're going to get Max Strus, 4,100. I mean, they're going to be so unbelievably popular. The positionality for specifically Max Strus, 4,100, he's going to look incredible. And then Garland at 7,100, yeah, it's the stone cold slowest matchup ever. not all that difficult of one, but Garland is 7,100 without Donovan Mitchell and no Ty Jerome behind him. It's interesting because like Ty Jerome didn't change his rates, which makes no sense. Like I was looking at the before after over in Add More Funds yesterday and didn't really see a whole lot of like change, but you got to imagine just more time out there on the floor potentially because there's going to be fewer minutes for Craig Porter Jr., who, by the way, is in play at 3K. I mean, Craig Porter Jr., I think, is your guy who's playing backup point guard minutes here. I mean, I can't imagine they have Sam Merrill, Isaac Okoro doing that kind of a role. And I think those guys are kind of in play. You could say Jalen Tyson, who's somebody that they've dusted off a couple of times, specifically that Miami game that was pretty chalky the other day when they had a number of guys out. That was the end of January the other day. That's hilarious. But the initial reaction is Mega Chalk Garland, warranted. Mega Chalk Max Strus incoming, warranted. Jared Allen's going to look better, 6,100. He gets to go up against a Brooklyn front court that isn't all that assuming with only Claxton out there. And then we're just going to get a ton of filler. Like, I think Okoro, Wade, Merrill, all of them are in play. I can't imagine any of them are going to be like major talking points outside of whomever starts at the 2.
Yeah, and that starting lineup, I assume that probably comes in the next 20 minutes or so as well. One more thing I want to bring to you guys before we go any further. We do have a PGA flash sale going on. This is going to be ending in one of a couple of ways, either at the end of NBA Live before lock or once 30 redemptions have been made of this code. That is going to end the promo here. Promo code PUT. There is a massive PGA DFS tournament this week. We have the Players Championship, a Millie Maker up on DraftKings. And if you guys want to try out our PGA product, which has been great. It's something that I never played PGA in the past. Well, I did on occasion. I just sucked at it. But I've started to play it more frequently since we developed the Sims. And it's actually been really profitable for me playing PGA DFS without knowing anything other than pressing a couple of buttons. And you guys can get 50% off any of our PGA DFS packages when you sign up with the promo code PUT. Once again, that promo is going to be ending either in 52 minutes when the show ends or when 30 people do claim that promo. And what's great about the number there is, as we saw the other day, Eric's math skills absolute dog shit, especially when he has to do some thinking. Because the other day we did something for MMA for UFC 313 on Friday, where Eric very astutely pointed out that if the offer is going to be available for the first 25 people that claimed it, and if 12 people claimed it so far, Eric did the math and realized that meant that there was 7 subscriptions left to be claimed. So Eric, would you like to try to defend your mathematical skills?
Yeah, so now you have 30. So we increased it because more people signed up than we anticipated. And I think that that's a great thing. But also, we wanted to get enough people in there. So now there's 30. So if there are 10 people who sign up, there will still be at least 15 spots available to you, because that is how I do math in my head. Actually, I think I did it the opposite. So anywho, if you guys sign up between now and the end of this, I guarantee you 50% off your DFS package, which means that also up to 25 of you can take advantage of this.
Also, I'm not going to make Eric try to do the math on what 50% of something like $30 might be, because who knows what kind of answer it is that he might come away with.
Shri-fitty.
Could be impossible. Eric might think a 50% discount means you're paying more. Who knows? He's not the sharpest. And the promo code is PUT, once again, PUTT, all capital letters. If you guys head on over to the site or use the link down below to go to our sign up page, enter that promo code. It's good for any of our PGA packages. You can sign up for a weekly package, a monthly package, and a Millie Maker on DraftKings this week. Shout out to Jeff Williams, who left the super chat. He said, thanks for the Spencer Dinwiddie betting advice, Greg. Picked up an extra $1,200. Absolutely. Happy to help. I had a good lean on that yesterday. It ended up coming through pretty easily. He had 18 points at the half. And it cashed in the third quarter. I think that's like the most sweat-free long shot bet that I've had in a minute. But yeah, happy to see. I had a handful of other messages too from people who profited on it. So thank you for the super chat, Jeff. Hopefully some of you other guys were also able to cash in on that for yesterday. I think Eric hit on it as well.
I sure did. I tailed you into infinity and beyond. I will say this, though. You sent me a couple of your tickets as well, and it was absolutely heartbreaking to see Harrison Barnes make a gimmicky 3 to not be the top scorer of the game, Spencer Dinwiddie, because I think you had like 28-1 on that or something. And what a POS for Harrison Barnes to chuck that. How dare he?
Yeah, I had. So overall, another really profitable betting night because of Dinwiddie as well as the Portfolio EV tools, which, by the way, if you guys want to check out a 7-day free trial of Portfolio EV tools, there's a link for that down below in the YouTube description box as well. Anybody signing up for the first time, you are eligible for that 7-day free trial. Over in playback, we've got the betting tools just running on screen. So if you guys want to see any of the top bets on the board, that's going to be auto-populating over in playback. So yeah, it was a good night. Spencer Dinwiddie definitely helped it out, but that 28-1 bet, very annoying because if you guys didn't see, some people in playback were sweating it last night as well, but with 3 seconds left in the game, and I have Spencer Dinwiddie 28-1 to be the leading scorer in the game. He's at 28 points. Harrison Barnes at 26. And like Eric mentioned, Harrison Barnes hits a 3 with like 1 second left in the game, and a totally ridiculous 3 as well. Like he had a guy right in his face. His foot was like borderline on the line, but who's going to review it at that point? Because the game didn't even matter. It only mattered for our bet. It didn't matter for anything else. And he hits like this crazy leaning 3 at the end of the game. But anyway, lots of people in chat seem to see Humboldt Parker as well, so that he cashed because of Spencer Dinwiddie last night. And let's get back to talking about tonight's slate, Eric. And here's what we have now for injury news. We've already got the Cavs guys out of the way, although we're waiting on the starting lineup there. As far as other players who are questionable, Drew Eubanks is. Normally that wouldn't matter, but it's a 4-game slate, so slightly less options. Before today, is Drew Eubanks, if he's in, out, is that going to matter to you at all?
Not really. Almost every piece of news matters to some extent on a 4-game slate because it's like, oh, maybe Drew Eubanks gives way to something, but not anything I really want to play. What, Kobe Brown? I think I'm good. I can't imagine it's going to be anything that affects my lineups.
Yeah, that's how I feel as well. I just wanted to make sure, 4-game slate, leave no stone unturned because, in the event that maybe there was somebody who had like a crazy potential contrarian lean on, we haven't had. So in recent slates, there's been no reason to dive super deep for value options because it's just been readily available to us. I mean, last night we had Lonnie Walker, we had Jared Butler, who was, all right. We had Ricky Council off the bench for Philly as well. Like there was just such an abundance of value plays. They didn't have to go that deep. But on a slate like today, you might have to dive a little bit deeper. But I agree with Eric. I don't think that Drew Eubanks is somebody who's going to move the needle for me in any kind of way. Anything else on the slate that you're waiting on? Or is it something that we could kind of just run the Sims and build things out as is?
Yeah, I think we can kind of do as is. I'm playing lighter than normal today with no late swap, with it just being the 4 games, a little bit more overlap. But I do think that there's still going to be some edges if you're paying attention. We'll see. I think Makovich starts. I think most people do as well from the New Orleans side. I think we could get some different iterations of Cleveland rotations that are interesting, specifically Craig Porter Jr. at 3K, Sam Merrill. Isaac Okoro is not the best fantasy producer, but he might be walking into a lot more minutes to be viable if he starts. There's a lot of things that are still going to be moving pieces throughout this slate for the next 45 minutes. So yeah, let's run it and kind of see what we've got. But we got Halliburton in. I think Drew Eubanks, only Q tag, I think, left that matters. Pat
Absolutely.
Connaughton.
For anybody who's looking at other players that might have a Q tag on DraftKings, they shouldn't. I don't even think there's anybody who's probable that matters at this point. It's just Eubanks who's questionable.
Yep. Pat Connaughton maybe, but I don't think so.
All right. If you guys have any questions for us, hit us up in the Discord. Leave us a super chat. We'll be keeping an eye on all of your guys' questions and comments. And if you are in Discord and at me, don't forget, any subscription you sign up for here at Stokastic does come with access to that Discord channel. And Coach DFS wants to know, who are the single entry locks for FanDuel and DraftKings today? Eric, who are the players who you just think you're not going to be able to get away from in a single entry lineup?
Don't think I'm going to be getting away from Darius Garland. If I had to guess based on my first run of stuff here, and we're still getting some stuff updated. Giannis, because I think we're going to be able to take some shots on some Cleveland cheapies. We've already got Makovich, who's insanely popular and probably should be, assuming that he starts. I think the other one that I'm kind of contemplating, like a Detroit center, I can't imagine playing single entry without either Duren or Stewart today, just because Like, there's just so much goodness that's up for grabs going up against Washington on a back-to-back, Sarr on a back-to-back, who's looked better. Like, this rookie class is finding ways to justify its existence at the end of this season. It's still terrible, but Alex Sarr on a back-to-back going up against this front court, like, either Duren or Stewart should just go absolutely ballistic. So I'm not saying to play one or the other. It kind of depends what else is in there, but I would be hard-pressed not to have a Detroit center in single entry today.
All right. Yeah, if we look at also Matkovic, who's going to be super popular. We are still waiting on the data update for the Cleveland Cavaliers here. But right here, I've got the FanDuel ownership pulled up where you could see we've got Zubats and Kawhi, both projected for north of 50% ownership. Then we've got over 40% ownership going to James Harden, Chris Dunn, as well as Giannis Antetokounmpo. Then you got 30% ownership going to Matkovic. So popular on DraftKings as well as on FanDuel, though much more so over on DraftKings. If you look at our most chalky players for DraftKings, Matkovic, 55%. We've got Zubats at 47%. Then the guys who are north of 30% owned, Jalen Duren, Kawhi Leonard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, as well as James Harden. And you said you're pretty confident that Matkovic starts. Is there anybody else you think would potentially start if it isn't him that they end up going to today?
Bruce Brown. You could slide everybody down. You put Bruce Brown out there. I think that's live. I think the days of Jeremiah Robinson Earl starting are dead. They are no more. RIP. I don't think Jordan Hawkins, they're probably going to end up starting out there. Like, if you made me pick somebody else, and I think it's extremely unlikely that it's somebody else other than Matkovic based on what they've done recently in some of these spots with Olynyk out, I would say it's Bruce Brown, but I'd say it's like 10% or less.
Yeah, I'm going to lean pretty strongly towards Matkovic being the guy that they end up going to today. But, you never know. Maybe some weird shit ends up happening and there's an unexpected starting lineup change. But I do think Matkovic is going to end up being the guy. As far as I don't even want to go over. I was going to say, as far as what the current ownership is, what do you make of players you think maybe should be higher or lower owned? But it's kind of fruitless to talk about just because once we get that update for the Cleveland Cavaliers, both in the player projections as well as the ownership projections, that's going to change the slate by a pretty good amount when it comes to Cleveland there. One other thing that I want to ask you on the Cavs as well is the spread for this game is still massive. Yep. Very, very significant. We now have it at 15 points, same as for the Detroit-Washington game. I want to go through both of these teams, both Cleveland as well as Detroit, and I guess maybe Washington and Brooklyn to an extent as well. But starting with the Cleveland-Brooklyn game, is there anybody you like playing for cheap who maybe could see extended run in a blowout? It's something you and I don't typically put a lot of thought into, but a 4-game slate is a different dynamic than like an 8-game slate or a 10-game slate. Are there any players who you are willing to get exposure to in the hopes of a blowout game script?
Yeah, I put a lot of thought into it, actually. I mean, we don't talk about it a lot on slates like yesterday where we had good value. Like, it's kind of a fruitless exercise on a 10-game slate to go through who we think closes in a massive blowout. But obviously, Cleveland is still going to be a massive favorite here. It's going to be a little bit tighter without Mitchell and without Hunter. But I can't imagine Cam Thomas is going to magically play 32, 33 minutes here. I mean, he got up to 29, which is nice, but you're definitely, if you're going to get him off the floor and like who could potentially close on the Brooklyn side, I think Trendon Watford's probably the most interesting one purely because he's a good fantasy producer, isn't exactly shy to shoot it. And Brooklyn should struggle to score in pretty much every single capacity. And I think also because of the positionality, him at power forward, like I can't imagine I want to go to Jalen Wilson at 3,500 when you have so many 3,500, 3,400 guys on the Cleveland side. I'd much rather take shots on. That being said, Sam Merrill, he can always get hot from three. You're looking to spike an upside from three here. He's made 7 threes in his last 2 appearances, last 2 games here, 19 minutes, probably goes into low 20s minutes mode. And at 3,300, you can definitely take shots on him. I think in a blowout, he's still probably out there knocking down shots and doing stuff. I think Jalen Tyson is starting to be somebody that we could actually like entertain on a 4-game slate if this gets really wonky, but I doubt I end up doing it once we get the update because of how good Max Strus is going to look, how good Garland's going to look, even Mobley to some extent at 8,300, even though his tag is far less advantageous. And on the Brooklyn side, I just basically want to go to like decent fantasy performers or Like I could see Zaire Williams at 4,400. He's been playing like a lot more minutes. He played 31 yesterday, didn't particularly shoot the ball well, but he finds ways of being effective in just kind of random different ways. Like he averages a steal and a half per game, or what? 1 steal per game, 1.5 when you combine with blocks. So 1.5 stocks per game. I could potentially get there as well, but yeah, I think that it's pretty clear cut that we still have good value when it comes to just taking shots on the Cleveland side relative to the Brooklyn side.
And we do have a projections update now for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and no real surprises. North of a 40 fantasy point projection on both Evan Mobley and Darius Garland. 43 fantasy points for Garland. We've got 43.89 for Evan Mobley, and then ownership that'll be updated in probably like 30 seconds or something like that. So we'll take a look at that in this column once that gets updated. We've also got Jared Allen in now for 33.5 fantasy points. Max Strus in for 24.25. One thing that's kind of interest to me here, Eric, there's no cheap guy who's a standout value for Cleveland. We've got some guys who are looking decent here. We've got Sam Merrill projected for 19.8 fantasy points at $3,300. That's pretty good relative to some of the other cheap options we have on the slate. We've got Okoro in for 18.7 fantasy points at $3,500. Craig Porter Jr. in for 17.3 fantasy points at $3K. So there's some serviceable value options, but are you surprised that there's no standout value option from Cleveland with Donovan Mitchell out?
No, because Makovich still exists, and Makovich is a good fantasy producer who should be starting. He's 3,700 with power forward center, and I don't find it surprising at all that they don't like show out. Now, the difference is that this is a 4-game slate, and Makovich isn't the only piece in your lineups. You're adding 7 other pieces. And that's where I think that there's a lot of utility in taking shots on a number of these guys. Even, Craig Porter Jr. is a flat 3K, 17 fantasy points. And if something happens to uber chalky Darius Garland, you can play them both together in lineups. I have no problem with that. But like if you're looking for the ultimate leverage piece, because once we get ownership updated on Garland, it's going to be a lot higher than we currently have. I look at Sam Merrill as a guy, or Craig Porter Jr. as a guy that just give you so much leverage, and potentially everything else on Cleveland fails. Now, Max Strus, because he's 4,100 with shooting guard, small forward, and can fit in just lineups so easily, he's going to be really hard for me to get away from, I think, just in an initial run of stuff. Mobley's expensive, which should keep it pretty muted. And Jared Allen, 6,100, I expect him to get up there in ownership as well. But I do think, at the same time that we're kind of poo-pooing him relative to Makovich, they're definitely viable on this slate.
Yeah, and let's see, we should have now. Yes, ownership just came in. So Let's read off the highest projected own plays on FanDuel and DraftKings now in light of the projections being updated. And now, so this is on FanDuel to start with, where Darius Garland now projected for 66% ownership. So super popular Darius Garland over on FanDuel. Zubats 57% owned, Kawhi Leonard 48% owned, Giannis and Harden, as well as Evan Mobley, they're all over 40% owned. Then in the 30% range, we've got Chris Dunn, Max Strus, Isaac Okoro, as well as Tyrese Halliburton. Now on the DraftKings side of things, if we're looking at the most popular players on DK, it is Darius Garland, 67% owned. So like you said, Eric, he's going to be crazy popular today. By far the players projected for the most ownership on the slate. And now we've got Strus at 51%, Zubats to 45%, Giannis 44%, Matkovic and Sam Merrill also both over 40%. So Matkovic still super popular, although with other options, his ownership has slightly reduced. Then at over 30% ownership, Jalen Duren, Kawhi Leonard, as well as Evan Mobley. Initial thoughts on the ownership here, Eric? Anything that is surprising to you, either they're a player who's not super popular or maybe somebody who's even more popular than you had anticipated?
No, I thought Garland would be the most popular play on the slate. I have him in 100% of lineups. Nothing shocks me about that whatsoever. Mobley is a little bit heavier than I expected at 32%, but our optimal percentage is still up there too, over a third of the time. That was the surprising one to me. I mean, I bet his points, I bet his threes, I bet pretty much everything Evan Mobley, but I thought at 8,300 he might pale in comparison to some other options there. Appears not. So I was a little bit light on Evan Mobley's projection, and I think that is much better in what we have for our data. Jared Allen, 6,100. I think, nearly 30% of lineups totally makes sense. Max Strus, he should be this popular. The Sam Merrill one, if he doesn't start, which I kind of assume he doesn't, I'm curious to see what happens to his ownership. At 41%, seems pretty heavy there. Isaac Okoro, I think, is probably a better candidate to go out and start here. Let me pull up our starting lineups page, because that's something that I've been doing a lot just to make sure, it's a good checks and balance system to make sure that I'm kind of on the right track. And if I have anybody different as far as like what the starting lineups go, and we've got exactly what I've got. So Garland, Okoro, Strus, Mobley, Allen. I don't know if I'd want 40% of Sam Merrill coming off the bench. That's for sure.
Yeah, and here you guys can see what the projected starting lineup is, which, by the way, we just got the actual starting lineup, which is Garland, Strus, Okoro, Mobley, and Allen. So nothing's going to have to change in our projections for this. This is exactly as we had it projected. Maybe some of the prop lines update a little bit for these players. And then as a result, that could, have a little bit of an impact once you see players who are confirmed as starters. So I wouldn't be stunned if our projection comes up a little bit on Okoro and dips a little bit on Sam Merrill. And then in turn, that would also mean that the ownership changes on those guys. So we'll see. I tend to think the ownership is going to change a little bit, Eric. I could end up being wrong, but that's what I think it is.
I'm with you.
Going to end up being.
It should come down a little bit, I would think. And Isaac Okoro's has to come up a little bit. I know he's not a good fantasy producer, but at 25% ownership, 3,500 starting, not a lot of guys behind him there. There's no Ty Jerome. You don't have Hunter off the bench. Like, there's just so many ways that Isaac Okoro walks into 30 minutes that even as a bad fantasy producer, I think you have to kind of entertain him in a quarter, maybe 30% of lineups for sure.
I am updating my lineups right now for the projection and ownership updates to the Cleveland Cavaliers, which obviously are really important to the slate. So after that's updated, we could definitely talk about some of our favorite guys to be getting to overall at each position. Let's see if there's any super chats here waiting for us or questions in Discord. No super chats. If there's no questions in Discord, Eric, then I think it might be time for the nuke of the night. All right, we do have a couple of questions here. One of them is related to something I want to talk about afterwards, which is our favorite contrarian plays at each position. But first, let's answer this question from Hey, I'm Drew, who wants to know, DK Cash Game plays. Also, can you talk more about the promo for signing up with a new sportsbook? Just tuning in now. Absolutely, Drew. So if you sign up with any of our affiliate partners, which are these ones listed right here. So any of these ones, you have to sign up through the link that we have down below in the YouTube description box. That's for tracking purposes because the sportsbooks need to know that you came to them from us. So the way that gets tracked is through that page. So click on that page in the YouTube description box. If you can't find it, just DM me and I'll send it over to you. If you sign up for any of these partners on this page, you get 1 free month of core access for each one you sign up for. So let's say you sign up for Vivid Picks and Better, then you get 2 free months of any sport of your choosing. So if you want to do 1 month of PGA, 1 month of NBA, 2 months of NBA, up to your discretion, any sport of your choosing, and you get 1 free month for each one of these books that you sign up for. So that's how that works. Hey, I'm Drew. As far as the other part of your question, he wanted to know, Eric, who are our cash game locks for today? And once again, to give you guys an idea of who the most rostered players are on the slate, because that's usually what should dictate your cash game lineups, some sort of combination of the top projected players as well as the highest owned players. A little bit different of a strategy in GPPs compared to cash games. Not to say that chalk is bad in GPPs, but it's necessary in cash games. A lot of times people say they're trying to get away from the chalk in cash games. You don't want to do that. You want to generally play the most popular guys. And if you look at some of these players, Darius Garland, Max Strus, Ivica Zubac, these are all guys, by the way, Giannis, Matkovic. I think the 5 most rostered players today by our projected ownership, those are your 5 must plays in cash games. Like Sam Merrill's also really popular, but with him not starting, I very much hesitate to call him a lock for cash games. Anybody else you would add as a cash game lock for today, Eric?
No. I think that's fine. Matkovic, Garland, Strus, Giannis. And then, yeah, those are the 4. You could put Zubac, I suppose, into that conversation as well. But, yeah, those would be my 4 main locks.
All right, let's see what else we had.
Are people honestly saying that I don't understand CLV. Just because I can't count to 30, which is the number of signups we have going today, does not mean you can make fun of me for not understanding CLV. I totally understand that. Second of all, we have Champagny starting. So that's fun. What the hell?
Do. For the Washington Wizards, who have no Bilal Coulibaly today. So we've got a starting lineup of Poole, Champagny, Middleton, George, and Sarr. Let's see. What did we have for Washington projections? We had
Champagny. We did not have Champagny starting. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, we had Champagny projected for 23 minutes. That's going to come up not to like 38 or anything like that, but probably somewhere around 30 minutes is what I'm expecting from Champagny now that he's been confirmed a starter. More or less what you're expecting too, Eric?
Yep, I think that makes sense. I mean, we're getting George starting out there. I mean, Carrington, is that the main guy who's taking like a huge clip? Who did we have as the other?
It's Coulibaly's. Coulibaly's out. So
I knew that. No, but I'm saying we had Carrington in the projected starters. Like I was just saying,
we had Carrington project for 31 minutes. I'm going to assume that it's like Carrington loses 5 minutes and Champagny gains 5 minutes, something along those lines.
Perfect.
And if you look at our per minute fantasy projection for Champagny in this matchup, we have him in for 0.97 fantasy points. So you think about that, right? We got a guy who we're projecting for right around a fantasy point per minute. He's only $4,700 and reasonable to think he's playing upper 20s, maybe low 30s minutes. He's a really strong looking option now and somebody who I was not really considering before.
Yep, I'm with you. I didn't think about him one time until his name showed up on the page. So thank you, Washington. Or sorry, we hate you, Washington. That's probably the right way of saying it.
We've got a super chat here from Jason LaPlante. He says, I need your best value for $3,500 or lower. Eric, I think this is a pretty good time to play the nuke of the night. What do you say?
Let's party. Maybe.
All right, Eric, I'll let you choose. I know for sure who it is that I'm going with. He's somebody who has been my nuke of the night, I think 3 times in this situation in the past. So maybe you know who that guy is. If it depends how strong you can recollect some of my previous nuke of the nights in certain scenarios. Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
I want you to go first because I think I know who it is, but I want to hear you say it. Say my name.
All right, so this is also going to answer the question that we got from, once again, Super Chat from Jason LaPlante wants to know our best value, $3,500 or lower. So not necessarily the guy who projects for the most fantasy points, sub $3,500, but the one I'm getting the most exposure to as a contrarian option. Craig Porter Jr., we've got projected. It's not like he's unowned or anything like that, but he's sub 20% owned. The Cavaliers are massive favorites today. There's a very live possibility that the Cavs are up by 20-plus points in the fourth quarter, and Craig Porter Jr. just plays all of garbage time. He's a good fantasy producer. If we go and look at what we have for Porter in our projections, you guys will see Craig Porter Jr., we only have in for 18 minutes, but 0.94 fantasy points per minute. So let's say there's a blowout where Cleveland ends up winning, like I said, by like 20-plus points. Every minute that Craig Porter Jr. is on the court in the fourth quarter that Darius Garland isn't, that is going to be leverage that Craig Porter is getting over Darius Garland. And in addition to that, once again, 0.94 fantasy points per minute at 3K. If all of a sudden Craig Porter Jr. walks into 24 minutes instead of 18 because of garbage time, you're looking at about 23 fantasy points for a projection. Then obviously upside to go higher if he ends up making a shot. So Craig Porter Jr., he's a guy who I want to be overweight to the field to and definitely have him in lineups that don't have Garland.
I love that shout out. I mean, there's a part of me that wants to go Jalen Tyson and just back it up as like 2-3K guys where same kind of point applies where he's somebody who can potentially walk into it there. But I kind of going in a different direction because he's somebody that I think is a little bit underappreciated here at the moment. And he's only right around 10% ownership. And he's traditionally been somebody who, we see start when, against last time out, he ends up getting to 32 minutes. You didn't have Zion Williamson out there, but the point remains, Jose Alvarado is a good fantasy producer. He is 4,600 for a New Orleans team that we're talking about Makovich. We're talking about some of these other ancillary pieces. I think still coming off the bench, Jose Alvarado should be walking into 26, 27 minutes in a lot of scenarios here. Somebody that's been attached to this team a little bit more than the Bruce Browns, than the Jordan Hawkins, than things of that nature. But it just comes down to like, if you're trying to get different and find paths away from some of the cheap Cleveland guys, if you're trying to find somebody who I think is just a little bit underappreciated right now at around 10%, Jose Alvarado, I really like taking shots on him on this slate specifically. Not a lot of late game exposure that I'm seeing outside of Matkovich. Obviously it's a very difficult matchup against the Clippers and Chris Dunn here, but Jose Alvarado off the bench should avoid, some of the major usage guys for at least brief stints for him. I think 4,600, there's a little bit of meat on the bone still.
We have a question in Discord that is going to correlate to your answer right here, because we got from the Ty the guy Wendy. Ty the guy Wendy wants to know, any love for Alvarado in single entry today? So Eric, you just gave him out as your nuke of the night pick. Do you also like him as a single entry option?
He is in my single entry lineup. So yes, I do.
There we go. Let's see. For me with Jose Alvarado, I've got some of them. Not a crazy amount, but he's definitely in some lineups for myself. I also want to remind you guys, because there's only 22 minutes left in the show, don't forget that this promo code PUT, it is going to be expiring either in 22 minutes or once we end up getting 30 people that redeem this promo code here. So sign up, promo code PUT, get yourself 50% off any PGA DFS package, and running out of time to claim that offer. And big contest for PGA DFS this weekend, Millie Maker over on DraftKings for the Players Championship. Let's see. Do we have an update for the Wizards starting lineup? We do. Just came through. So let's look at projections here for Washington. And we've got the projections updated and then ownership. That'll be updated shortly as well. So here's what we ended up doing for minutes. We now have Champagne in for 27. We got Bub Carrington in for also 27. So kind of similar to what I thought was going to happen, Eric. I had said that I thought 5 minutes would go from Carrington to Champagne. It ended up being 4 minutes going from Carrington to Champagne. We now have Champagne in for 25.2 fantasy points. We've got Carrington in for 20.34 at $5,800. He's just a really tough click at this point. What do you make of Champagne now? 27 minutes, 25 fantasy point projection. How high of a priority is he going to be for you?
Yeah, he's going to be a pretty decent one. There's basically what I think is interesting is the push and pull between Champagne and Matkovich now, where I got to think the Matkovich number maybe comes down a little bit. I mean, I strongly prefer him 1v1 just because of the $1,000 savings, and Champagne, the minutes can get jerked around a little bit here, but 4,700 for him. I think he's going to fit into lineups pretty darn easily. You look at all the other popular plays outside of Giannis, who's got the power forward center eligibility, but it's Garland point guard, Duran center, Zubac center, Harden point guard, Strus shooting guard, small forward. Like, not a lot of power forwards outside of the Matkovich piece. So it's just something that I think makes more sense on this slate, where getting to some Champagne, he's a good fantasy producer, nearly a fantasy point per minute guy. Did he really? I wanted to see his minutes yesterday. Did he get any kind of run whatsoever? Got 24 minutes yesterday. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think 30 is definitely on the table for him, and that looks pretty good at 4,700 for a fantasy point minute a guy.
Yeah, it's I think our projection and having him at a little bit more modest minutes of 27, totally reasonable, especially considering some of the blowout risk. There's also been other start Champagne's made this year where he's like started pretty well and then just barely ended up playing the rest of the game. So it's always hard to nail down his minutes. I think 27 is a pretty reasonable projection, and he's going to be somebody who wasn't in any of my lineups before, and I'm curious to see what he ends up being in for me now. As far as ownership, which is now going to be updated, let's look at Washington first on FanDuel. Where do we have these guys now? So Champagnie is actually 40% owned over on FanDuel. So small forward, I guess makes sense. Small forward position is pretty weak. So Champagnie, 40% owned over on FanDuel. Nobody else is all that popular. Next most rostered player is a 12% owned Marcus Smart. If we go to DraftKings now, we've got for Washington, Champagnie 17% owned. The next most popular player is Sarr at 5%. I assume I'm going to be overweight to the 5% or the 17% on Champagnie when I re-update my lineups right here.
Think so too. On DK specifically, definitely going to be overweight to that number.
The 40+% ownership for him on FanDuel, I get it. I think he's a good cash game option, but I'm only playing on DraftKings today. I'll be building out lineups for both DraftKings and FanDuel and updating them for the purposes of answering your guys' question. But I think that's a little bit rich of ownership for sure. It's funny. Like, he projects the same on both sites. He's about the same price tag, but relative to what the ownership is, I would want to be overweight to him on DraftKings and underweight to him on FanDuel.
Totally get it.
Next question that we have here from Discord. Mr. Cool came one of our favorite contrarian plays. I'm going to update my lineups here for FanDuel as well as DraftKings, and then I'll circle back to answer your question on who I got the most of as contrarian options. Rabashua, DKGPP, one thin play and one hidden gem. So for me, I'm going to go Craig Porter Jr., who I'd answered before. He's somebody who I like as, it's not like he's super low owned or anything like that, but somebody I want to be overweight to the field too. I think he's underrepresented by the field. Thin play. Is there a thin play that you like today, Eric?
Oh yeah. I mean, I would say Tyson is extremely thin.
Okay.
I like Tyson. Jalen Tyson. I'm going to play some of him and Craig Porter Jr.
I usually think of thin as somebody I don't want to roster. So,
got it. Okay. I think of thin as in like, it's dicey.
No, I'm just saying, like, I think you answered the question the way Rabashua wants you to answer it.
Correct.
The problem is I usually think of thin plays as somebody who's like, hey, that's kind of thin. I don't want to be there today.
Yeah. I think thin on this slate, it's not that it's like I think Damian Lillard is thin because of how many good point guard plays we have, and he plays alongside of Giannis. Like, that might be where I'm thinking about it. But like, is he viable? It's a high projected player that can give you differentiation. Like, I don't have a crazy issue with it, but I would think about the way you're talking about it. Damian Lillard is a little thin.
Yeah. So let's see. Who is somebody that I have? Okay, here's a thin one to me who makes his way into some lineups. Isaiah Stewart. Isaiah Stewart as a big man, especially if the Pistons win via blowout, he can get some extended fourth quarter run. Maybe he'll punch somebody in the face. You never know. Weird shit can end up happening with Isaiah Stewart. But $3,200 in a matchup against the Wizards where he could get extended garbage time run. He's somebody who I can make a case for as being what I think is more in line of what Rabashua is thinking. Kind of thin, but there's a path to upside.
There you go. See, you found it. You did it.
The next question we have is from M. Grizzly. Wants to know, are we boosting anybody tonight? Eric, is there anybody that you're looking to boost to get more of than what the Sims are otherwise giving you?
Craig Porter Jr., that's it.
Yeah. For the most part, slates like this where we have all the injury news, I'm kind of just playing things as is. I assume that because I'm giving Craig Porter Jr. a couple of extra minutes that I'm going to get overweight to him anyway. But if I wasn't overweight to Craig Porter Jr., I would boost him to be a guy to be overweight to the field too there, M. Grizzly. We've got from Blinky, favorite FanDuel GPP contrarian pay-up plays. Okay, so this is a very specific question. He wants to know our favorite contrarian pay-up plays, but it has to be in between $7,000 and $8,000.
Okay.
I have to look at the pricing of players.
I'm pulling it up here on FanDuel. Oh, let's see.
All right, so there's probably not even that many guys to choose from.
Zubats, Duran. I mean, I like Zubats a lot. Garland's between 7 and 8K. I love Garland.
Well, he said contrarian though.
Yeah, I'm just looking contrarian. There's not really a contrarian one I like. Jared Allen, he has power forward center. I didn't see what the ownership ended up on FanDuel, but I got to assume it's lower at 7K than what he would be 6,100 DK.
Yeah, I've got, so between 7 and 8K, Zubac's super popular, like you said. He projects quite a bit lower, but Duren's only $200 less expensive. Should he be, should Zubac's be 7 times more owned than Jalen Duren? Probably not. So if I want to be contrarian, I think there's a pivot to be had there in Duren.
I like that.
And Duren, I'll see when I have everything updated here, but he's somebody I was getting to on DraftKings.
Yeah. I mean, there's a 7 fantasy point discrepancy between him and Zubac's on FanDuel. I would be hard pressed to say that that's something I'd want to do a lot of. But yeah, I think he's definitely viable.
Yeah. I mean, the other part of this too is we have in the price range you gave us, we have 3 players to choose from.
Yeah, it's not great, Bob.
We've got CJ McCollum, we've got Jordan Poole, we've got Jalen Duren. So I'm going to go with Duren, but kind of slim pickings there. Bunny 2705. I hear you talk about lineups with or without a certain stack. No, I don't really talk about stacking in NBA DFS. I don't think anyway. Tonight lineups with Porter Jr., but not Garland. How do you go about doing this in the Sims? Do you have to manually search and favorite, unfavorite? Okay, so the way that I go about doing this is I use the filters, and if I had, all right, here's what I'll do. I'll build out lineups in here and I'll show you how I do it. I'll just build lineups in Contest Generator and then I'll sim them, and then I'll show you guys how I use some of the filters. But yeah, basically what I would do is I would filter for lineups that do not contain Garland, but do contain Craig Porter Jr., and I would pick out some of the top ones there. That's the simplest way to do it. And then you just do it by the top sim ROI lineups. Next question is from Einsteinium. He said, is there really a need for cheap value given the lack of pay up options tonight? Yeah. I mean, we have Cade Cunningham on the slate. We have Giannis on the slate. We have James Harden on the slate. These are all guys I'm rostering.
Yeah, they're awfully good too. I don't hate Zion. I mean, 9,200 is an insane tag when you're only playing like 28, 29 minutes tops, but he's done pretty well with it so far. I mean, his potential assists are out of control. His rates are out of control. I still think there's meat on the bone for, him being playable as a spend up option, and he can put up 55, 60 for you. Seems pretty important on a slate like today. Halliburton, first game back, but didn't play the front end of the back-to-back. Got to assume he's close to 100, and he was just scorched earth before it came in. Like, there's still some very, very viable spend ups. So yeah, I get what you're saying, where it's basically just Giannis and Cade Cunningham, but like Harden exists, Williamson exists, Halliburton exists, Mobley 8,300 isn't exactly free. There's a lot of ways that you want to still get to these guys. Zubac's 8K, obviously. Like, there's still a lot of really good spend ups.
Let's circle back onto Mr. Coolcam's question, where he asked us for our favorite contrarian plays at each position on FanDuel. And starting at point guard, let's see, at point guard for myself, Eric. And so for the size of the slate, sub 20% owned, is that fair?
Yeah, that's great.
All right, that is going to be Cade for me on FanDuel.
On FanDuel, I'll echo Cade just because I like the spend up. FanDuel going to be looser pricing, should be good to go there.
Shooting guard for me over on FanDuel. Boy, contrarian shooting guard on FanDuel. I guess I'll say Marcus Smart just because they're so thin today, but there isn't one I really like all that much.
Back to back, but Jordan Poole, the usage is just It's silly at times. I mean, he only played 23 minutes yesterday. He should be good for full minutes if this game stays competitive somehow. I don't love it, but he's under-owned at like 6%.
All right. At small forward, that is going to be for me. Let's see. Small forward on FanDuel.
Sam Merrill. Oh, Sam Merrill's 22%, so that's too bad.
I'll say I'll go with Kaishan George.
Boy, small forward is so gross.
Yeah, that's how we ended up with Champagny being over 40% owned on FanDuel.
Yeah, I totally get it now. Tim Hardaway Jr., 4,100. Have fun.
All right, now at power forward over on FanDuel, where power forward is actually a much better position. There's a bunch of guys that I could go with here that I like. I'll answer Zion, though.
Alex Sarr.
Okay. Both of those are ones I was considering. Obviously, I was considering Zion because I picked him. Sarr was another one that I was absolutely considering. The reason I didn't go with Sarr at power forward is that I'm going to give him out at center.
Oh, there you go. That was a nice way to do it. Man, I really don't like anything center that's under 20% that I'm looking at right off the top of my head. Zoo is just eternally underpriced at 7,900. Duran is there. I'll go with Duran just because, I mean, we had that conversation. He's 200 less, but I strongly prefer Zubats.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I definitely prefer Zubats too. But I mean, once again, we got to ask the question where there was 3 potential answers, and it was like, here's the one that I can make the best case for.
That's totally fair.
The next question that we have in here, it is, I think we actually have all the, oh, never mind. Here we go. Bees in your ass wants to know, is fading Garland to play Harden getting too cute? The only thing that I am going to say to this, which I'm going to also circle back on this from before. So if you go to the filters here and you say lineup contains Porter, and then you add filter, you have to change this to and. Lineup does not contain Garland. All right, so what you'll see here is all the lineups in order of sim ROI for the best projected lineups that contain Craig Porter Jr. and do not contain Darius Garland. So I'm going to answer 2 questions at once here. First off, the question about how I find lineups that have Porter but don't have Garland, there it is. That's how I go about doing it. The other question here that we were asked about, is fading Garland to play Harden getting too cute? No. I don't think you, especially in GPPs, you're never obligated to have to play a specific player. I have 72% of Darius Garland. So, you know, it's a pretty good amount of him. I have 31% of Craig Porter Jr. So I have some lineups that have both of them. The majority of my lineups without Garland are going to have Craig Porter Jr. So Bees in your ass, yeah, you're not obligated to play anybody in a GPP, especially a game here where there's blowout risk. There's an angle where it could go awry. I still like Garland a lot. He's my most rostered player, but I'm way overweight to field on Craig Porter Jr. If you want to build a lineup with James Harden, go for it. I recommend you have Craig Porter Jr. in that lineup as well, though. Eric, I know you'd said you're playing 100% of Garland. Is that still the case?
Yes. Yeah, I'm still going to play some Craig Porter Jr., but I have 90, so 98%. It's going to turn into 100 in this last run, so don't worry about it. 100% Garland incoming.
All right, let me check to see if there was any super chats that came in. I just uploaded my lineups. I should be set to go there. And also, if you guys haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and final call. Just 5 minutes left to take advantage of the putt promo. 50% off any PGA DFS promo with that code PUT. Go ahead and take advantage of it. Millie Maker on DraftKings. That's going to be locking early Thursday morning. I think it's like 6 a.m. Eastern time, 3 a.m. Eric's time that the Players Championship lock. Something along those lines.
Yo, good morning.
Orion wants to know, what's the best way to go for shooting guard for a FanDuel GPP? Let's see. FanDuel shooting guards. Who looks the best over on FanDuel? Max Strus. He's going to be popular, but I think for good reason. And I know Eric likes to reference the boom bust tool a pretty good amount. And if you do look at our optimal rates, we do have Max Strus being somebody who's quite underowned in our data, even though he is going to be the most rostered shooting guard. Just kind of goes to show how weak that position is. So we've got also, I'll sort here by value. Max Strus, by far the best points per dollar play at the entire position. And if we sort by the optimal rate as well as shooting guard, actually Chris Dunn has a pretty good chance of being optimal as well, 41%. I prefer Max Strus to Chris Dunn. As a secondary shooting guard option, I like Tyrese Halliburton. I'm kind of surprised that he has shooting guard eligibility. He has been all kinds of hot and cold this season, where it's like he's good for a stretch, he's terrible for a stretch, he alternates good games and bad games, he's hurt, he's healthy. I always like the upside of Halliburton. That is one thing that has been nice about his inconsistency this year, is that his price tag isn't nearly as high as it was a season ago. Max Strus, Tyrese Halliburton, that's my favorite shooting guard combination over on FanDuel. Yourself, Eric? Yeah,
I think that the Halliburton shooting guard eligibility makes no sense, but take advantage of it. Like, that's cool. I brought up Jordan Poole before. I still think he's like interesting, where the minutes could just get extended on the second half of the back-to-back here as well. You got so much ownership coming in for Cam Thomas at shooting guard, 6,400. That's kind of wild to me as well. What do you think about the Chris Dunn ownership? 5K on FanDuel, because, the stocks, that's definitely going to make him look a little bit better relative to what you've got over on DK. So I'm not really playing him on DK, so I'll throw Chris Dunn out there on FanDuel.
All right. Yeah. I mean, we have the three guys we just mentioned are the three guys we have with the highest optimal rates: Max Strus, Chris Dunn, Halliburton. I like Strus and Halliburton the most, but I don't really have an issue with Chris Dunn either, especially because of how weak the position is. A couple of other questions or a few other questions that we got to here in Discord. Bando wants to know Merrill, Okoro, or Craig Porter Jr. I like Craig Porter Jr. the most of all those guys.
Yeah, so do I.
Clintwood 83, Okoro, Merrill for DK Cash. For Cash, Okoro, I ended up preferring Merrill for GPPs though.
Yeah. Merrill's ownership, I'm very curious to see what Merrill's ownership ends up being, because I could see this being way lower, just out of the middle of nowhere. What did we end up for a final run on him? 38%.
35.
That seems a little high to me. I think you could see that come down for sure. I wouldn't be all that shocked. 38%, man. That's a hefty number.
Yeah, here we've got Sam Merrill, 38% owned, and Isaac Okoro. Actually, maybe for cash games, just because the ownership is there, I'll say Sam Merrill. I feel a little bit safer with Okoro just because he's starting, but I've more exposure to Merrill and GPPs than I have to Okoro. And then Gator Nation, do we like Champagny on FanDuel? Yes and no. I think he's a very good option relative to the other players of the position. I just think he's a little bit too popular in GPPs.
The position just sucks.
Yeah, it is an absolute dog shit position. The small forward spot over on FanDuel. Eric, any final thoughts on the slate? The hour, even though there was only 4 games, not all that much injury news, went by pretty quick. Any final thoughts to the people before we sign off for the night?
Yeah, can't wait to go watch Garland pull a Josh here. But here's the thing. Josh isn't on playback, so I feel much better about this 100% Darius Garland madness. But it is what it is, man. I'm rolling it out, playing more limited lineups today. So happy to be just kind of trusting the data. And I feel really, really good about this slate for whatever reason. Think that there's some really nice points of differentiation. Dennis Schroeder, somebody we didn't really get to talk about all that much, like Jose Alvarado. I think that there's just some ways to go about this one that are a little bit off the board. It's a fun slate.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you've not done it, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I dropped the link into playback. We're not going to be doing a post-lock show. There just isn't going to be all that much for us to cover, either from a betting standpoint or from late swap. No players on the injury report. Only 2 games left to go to be locked. So if you guys do want to head into playback, we'll have the games up on screen. You guys could sweat them together. You could watch them. I usually watch some of the games in there as well with you guys after I eat dinner. So go hang out in playback. Have a good night, guys. Good luck. And other than that, see you here tomorrow. Peace out.